The journey has been very hard. 30 plus years, over half my life.
We are on the scene of a tragic drama which unfolded just a short time ago.
This monster, who calls himself Edward Graff, seemed to be carried. Sometimes you can invite evil in without knowing it. I really wish that he would have gotten the death penalty. But instead, he was going to be set free.
I testified in my first trial, and I would testify again, and all I can tell him is that, I didn't do it.
It's a lie, just like he lied from the very beginning. What he did is so evil. Even if he died, even if he got the death penalty, I will never have complete justice for what he did. In this box are all the pictures that I have left. This is my box of memories. This picture was taken when I was still single before I married Ed. It's a picture of Joby, Jason, and me. I was divorced for about 4.5, 5 years, working 2 jobs, raising my little guys. I was struggling at the time. I taught school during the day, and I worked from 5 till 9 at a jewelry store at the mall. Sometimes Ed would come in and visit with the other girls that worked there. I thought that he was this guy that had it all together. Good job at the bank, and he was actively involved in his church, and he had a home and a boat. He had a good reputation in town. He was like a pillar of the community. One day I received a call from Ed, and not knowing how he got my phone number, I was surprised. Found out later that it was through one of my friends. He seemed very interested in me. We went to eat a couple of times. So then I got to know him a little bit better. At least I thought I did. I told Ed I was going to move in with my dad because I was having a hard time making ends meet. So one day, unannounced, there was a knock at my door. When I opened the door, I was very surprised to see Ed Graff standing there.
Ed, I wasn't expecting you.
He said he was just in the area and he stopped by.
I know that you said you were packing up this weekend, and I figured I'd surprise you and stop by.
He offered to help me move. It made me feel uneasy that he knew my address.
Come on, you look like you could use another set of hands.
That's very sweet, but you don't have to do that.
I felt like he was almost like stalking me. But at the same time, a part of me was a little bit relieved that I was going to have his help.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to impose.
No, I could use the help.
I expressed to him that all I wanted was friendship out of this. And I was not ready to get into another relationship.
So you could just put those in this box.
Yeah.
Thanks, I really appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure.
But he continued to come around. He was persistent. Whenever he did some of his deeds to try to help me and make my life easier, it was always in a way that drew a lot of attention.
Claire, hi.
Hi.
And have a seat.
Thank you.
I went into my credit union one day to check on my loan that I was stuck with from my husband.
I was hoping to make a payment today.
Oh. Let's see.
One of the loan officers told me that this young man had been in and that he had paid off my loan.
Your loan has been fully paid for.
I said, well, who would pay that loan?
It looks here like it is a Mr. Ed Graff.
It was Ed.
Ed,
Ed had been in and paid the loan off, several $1,000s. I had mixed emotions. I felt happy, I felt special, but a little reluctant to what was behind all of this. Ed and I were not in a serious relationship.
Hey, Claire.
Ed?
Did you like your surprise?
You didn't have to do that.
I know I didn't have to.
When I thanked Ed for paying off the loan, I said, it's a lot of money. That's quite a chunk. He acted like it was just not a big deal. It was nothing. I was just trying to help you.
It's too much. I can't accept
Really,
it.
don't worry about it. I like to help when I can.
Thanks.
It's my pleasure.
When I told one of my family members that he had paid off my loan, they said, this guy is somebody that you need in your life. If he asked you to marry him, you'd be a fool not to.
I think the least I can do is repay you with a cup of coffee.
Coffee would be wonderful.
As Ed and I spent more time together, he won me over. I was willing to give the relationship a chance because I thought in time that maybe my feelings would grow. As Ed and I spent more time together, our relationship wasn't the hot kind of romance, but it was a good choice. We didn't date all that long before he started talking about marriage.
I've been giving this a lot of thought.
He presents me with this gorgeous engagement ring. The ring was much more than I expected. I was really taken back because of the size of it. He also paid for the wedding dress and the honeymoon. I know he had a good job at the bank, but I just wondered how he could afford that. But he assured me that everything was okay. He just seemed to have this life that was so calm and laid out, and I decided to accept his proposal and just move forward. We might not have had that crazy dynamic chemistry, but I thought maybe that it would grow in time. I noticed Ed started to change after we were told that we were pregnant. I started seeing more controlling attitude. One afternoon after school, I stopped to do a little shopping and then I went home. And I probably arrived 20, 30 minutes later than I normally do.
Ed? What's wrong?
He was standing there tapping his watch, like, you're late.
Hi, honey.
You know what time it is?
And he said, you usually are home 30 minutes before now. Where have you been? He was keeping tabs on me. And I said, I don't have to get permission from you. You're not my daddy.
I didn't realize I needed your permission to stay out.
He just turned around and walked in the house. I felt like I was being suffocated, but I suppose I thought he was just being super overprotective, like very overprotective of me because I was carrying his child. So I just kind of let it go. Ed has his own idea of how things should go. And if you don't agree with it, there's always some kind of price to pay. This is a good picture. We always had birthday parties, somewhere special. When I first introduced Ed to my sons, he was good with them. I felt like Ed would be a good stepfather. I asked Joby and Jason how they felt about Ed. Did they like him? Would they like for him to be their new stepdad? And they both said yes. They were very excited about it. But when I married Ed, I started seeing a change in him. I feel like Ed wanted Joby and Jason to be non-existent. He wanted them to just disappear into their room. He wanted everything to be just about his baby and his new lifestyle, but without my sons. When I look back, I start seeing all these different little red flags. Joby and Jason were very excited about having a new baby, wanting to be close to their little brother.
Boys, come here.
Until one day, when Ed was not there, it was time to feed him a bottle.
You guys want to help?
No.
No. You were practically begging me the other day.
And they were like, no. And they had this total different change of attitude. So what's going on? This is all you talked about, was getting to handle the baby, hold the baby.
What's wrong? Joby.
We don't want to hold him now.
And they looked down instead of looking at me. I said, look at me in the eyes and tell me why you have this change of attitude. And I said, is it Ed?
Did your stepfather say something to you?
And then they said, if Daddy finds out, we're going to get a terrible spanking.
Honey. Well, Ed's not here, and I say that you can hold the baby. Come here. Why don't you help me feed him?
He's at work. I don't care what he said to you. Who wants to go first? I just let it roll off my shoulders because I thought he was concerned about his baby. And this is the part that really haunts me. I didn't realize that he was driving a wedge between me and my sons. I was looking for Ed, and he wasn't in the bedroom, wasn't in the rest of the house. I opened the door, he was in the garage, and the light was off. I noticed that he had a hot dog in his hand, and I asked him what's the deal?
Ed, what are you doing?
Ed said cats were using his flower beds as a litter box. And he said, I'm going to put strychnine in a hot dog, and then it'll take care of them. They'll never be around here again.
That seems a little extreme, Ed.
And I said, that's very cruel. He just said, go on back in the house. I'll be in a few minutes. I never saw that cat again. And it made me have a sick stomach. Because if he could do that to an animal, what is he capable of? If something gets in his way and he doesn't like it, he gets rid of it. That is truly the story of Ed Graff. Joby and Jason were swimming here. They're having fun. They just look free and happy. The boys always loved the water from when they were really little. And one day Ed took it a little too far.
So cute. They're like little fish.
One weekend we were just having fun in the pool, and I noticed that there was a lot of splashing going on. I thought Jason was trying to swim up to the shallow end. Then I realized that Ed was holding him under the water, and he was just thrashing, just trying to get up.
Ed, stop.
And I screamed at him and said, "What are you doing? Let him up." I could see Jason's head, and I could see Ed holding him down. Jason, when he could get up and get a breath, he took a deep breath, and he started crying. He goes, "I couldn't breathe. I couldn't get my..." And he was very upset about it.
Are you okay, honey? Are you sure? You all right? You promise?
I got very angry with Ed, but he just seemed to blow it off.
Why would you do that, Ed?
Oh, we were just horsing around, right, champ?
He said, "We were just playing." I could tell our marriage was really being threatened by his behavior.
Never do that again. If you keep this up, I swear.
I can't continue to expose Joby and Jason to this kind of treatment. And then he said, "If things don't work out and we happen to split up, you will never take my son from me." He didn't mention Joby and Jason. He just said, "You will never take my son from me." It felt like it was a threat in so many words. What am I going to do? I just wanted to keep the peace. I didn't want to make waves. I didn't want to have our marriage already be on the rocks and dragging my kids in and out of a marriage. Even my dad, when I went to him and told him, and these are some of the things that are happening, he said, "Just be patient with him and see if things don't settle down."
Ed?
I did it for you.
The wounds from that will never heal. And I've learned to live with it. I've learned to go on. But I will carry this pain to my grave. After work one day, when I went into the house, Ed was there, and he normally wasn't there at that time of day.
Ed?
And I could tell he had been crying.
What's wrong?
I thought something happened to someone in his family, his parents, or somebody was sick or something happened. So I asked, "What's going on?"
I was fired today.
He told me that he had lost his job at the bank for embezzlement.
I'm sorry.
How much?
$70,000.
70,000. Oh my God.
And I asked him, "How long has this been going on?" And he said 12 years. As he was talking, the puzzle pieces start fitting in. This is how he is like a bottomless money pit. And that's the reason I have this ring on my finger, because of him taking money that didn't belong to him. Ed said, "Please stay. I don't want you to go. I'm just begging you to stay and for us to work this out."
Please don't leave me. Please, please.
I felt like that at that moment, he was being sincere.
It's gonna be okay.
I'll make it up to you, I swear.
The bank did not press charges. He was going to meet with them and see if they could make restitution and pay it back. He said that he was going to use his 401k to pay it back, and that his mother was going to help him try to figure out how to come up with the rest of the money. It's all taken care of. Don't worry about it. after Ed was fired from the bank, Ed got a job as a claims adjuster for an insurance company. He seemed very interested in the fire and arson that he was learning about. One evening, we were at my brother's house, and my sister-in-law mentioned that they were interested in getting new carpet.
It is old and it is ratty, but we can't afford to get a new one.
Well, what if you didn't have to pay for it?
Ed volunteered information about how they could get new carpet if fire jumped out from the fireplace and burned it, that they could file an insurance claim. Ed said that fire is hard to prove. Sometimes it's hard to determine if it was actually an accident.
You can't be serious. You can go to jail for something like that.
Claire, relax.
I just said that is wrong. That's like lying, making a false claim. It's like stealing again. And he said, oh, don't worry about it. You're way too serious about this.
Cheers to the new rug.
All right.
He just blew it off.
There we go.
Ed came to me with a pamphlet.
Claire, you got a sec?
Yeah.
Just wanted to show you something.
Ed decided that it was a good idea to get some extra life insurance on the boys. Ed said that this is life insurance, but kind of has a dual purpose because it's not only a life insurance policy, we could cash it out and use it for their college tuition.
Honestly, this is the best thing we could do for them.
And I thought it was a great idea because at this point we were, didn't have the money to pay for 3 college educations.
It'd be nice to give them something to hold on to.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
He was going to use this 401k to pay the bank back. This would help us a lot down the road.
What do you say?
Go for it.
I did not see the policies come in the mail. But I wasn't suspicious. Ed was a claims adjuster. I felt good about him relaying the information to me. I just thought, okay, it's all taken care of. It just leaves you weak. I felt like this wasn't really happening, but it was. It was reality. On August 26, 1986.
Claire.
Yeah?
I was in my classroom, and the principal comes in to tell me that he received a call and that I needed to go home.
Something's happened.
He goes, but they want me to drive you home. And I asked him, what's the deal? What's going on? He goes, well, there's been a fire at your house. We got in his car and he drove me the back roads. We said very few words. He was super quiet. Pulling up in the driveway, I looked around and I saw the streets lined with cars, emergency vehicles, and kids along the sidewalks had their hands over their mouths, and some of them were crying, and I knew that something was wrong. Severely wrong.
We are on a scene of a tragic drama which unfolded just a short time ago. Just over this fence, there is a storage shed. Now, most of the details are still sketchy, but there may have been an explosion.
Ed was waiting in the garage. I said, where are the boys?
Claire,
What's
stop.
happened? Where's Jason and Joby?
And he said, well, we've lost the boys. And I thought, it didn't dawn on me exactly what he was trying to say. In my mind, I was thinking, what did they just get scared and run off? Maybe they're hiding somewhere.
Well, let's go find them.
No, Claire.
And I said, where are they? And he said, Claire, Joby and Jason are dead. I felt like somebody cut me off at my knees, reached down my throat, pulled my heart out. I remember pushing him out of the way, and one of the volunteer firemen came up to me, and I sort of pleaded with him, I want to hold them. I want to hold my babies before you take them away. I just have to. And he said, so gentle and so kind, I just have to encourage you not to go because they don't look the same. I told him I had hugged him and kissed him goodbye that morning, and he said, then that's what you need to remember. This is Jason. Jason was the funny guy. He was full of laughter, and he was a little mischievous. I guess he got that from my dad. He really liked music, so he would dance and have fun. He just had this flair, this extra jive about him. That was his personality. Joby's was more serious, and he was very competitive as far as athletics. He really liked sports. This picture is of Joby. Of the two, he was the protector. He was the protector of his brother. And while they were so close in age, they were always together. I don't think they remember a time when the other one wasn't there. Oh, this is my favorite. Yep. This is one of my favorite pictures, taken a few months before they died. This was from my sister's wedding. They were junior groomsmen. This picture looks exactly like the last time I saw him. Pictures are really important to me because they bring me back to a place and time with a happy heart. The volunteer firemen said that they found some things that could be salvaged. Their schoolwork, pictures. This is some of the artwork that the firemen salvaged from the fire and gave to me. Some of it is just singed around the edges. I said, why were those things out there? Because the last time I saw them, they were under their bed. And that was just a few days ago. They had to be placed in the storage shed by Ed, because Joby and Jason would never put those books out there. Anything that he could get his hands on, he put in the fire. And this is what's left. It was ruled accidental fire. I was told that the boys might have been in the building playing with matches, but none of this made sense. Why would the boys go outside to a storage building on a hot summer day? The next morning, everything was gone. No debris anywhere. But there was a sprinkler going. I said, why is the sprinkler out there?
Do you have to run the sprinklers?
And he said that he was just going to try to get the grass growing again.
You don't want to look out there and be reminded of what happened.
Who would do that? Not a parent that has just lost 2 children the night before. Very odd behavior. He said he was just trying to help. It would be better to clean all this up so you wouldn't have to look out the window and see what's left of the storage building. But Ed was not comforting. He didn't hold me. He didn't put his arms around me and say, we're going to get through this. It was almost as if Ed was erasing Joby and Jason from my life, from my memory. He tried to. I was trying to figure out a plan to get away from Ed, but I noticed that Ed was following me around, keeping very close tabs on me. How was I going to handle this? Those couple of days there, those were just the darkest part of my life. Ed and I went to the funeral home, and the funeral director was giving me choices.
I just never thought I'd have to make a decision like this.
I know it's difficult. If there's anything we can do to help.
And Ed said, well, you know what? We could just put them in the same casket, and then we just have to get one. And, you know, I said, absolutely not.
How could you say something like that? No, I won't do that.
They were individual children. They need their individual caskets.
Why don't I show you some other options?
It just seemed to me that he just doesn't have that kind of connection that a parent has with the loss of a child. It was sort of just taking care of business. He was already making a claim on the insurance policies. The boys couldn't have done this to themselves. I was very suspicious. I noticed that Ed was following me around, keeping very close tabs on me. I wanted to talk to my best friends. I couldn't have private time with any of them to tell them my feelings inside, how I felt like Ed was behind this.
So how are you holding up?
It's been a struggle.
To be honest, I don't know.
We're doing about as expected, you know.
He made sure that he was right there in almost every conversation, so I could not have any private conversation with anyone.
Ed, I'm so sorry for your loss.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. Please grab something to eat. There's plenty of food, all right?
I don't remember any kind of support from him that day at all. Ed was especially interested in us going on with our life in a normal way.
We're going to get through this together.
He seemed to have a pep in his walk, almost cheerful. He even grabbed my fingers, just held them and said, I thought if Joby and Jason were gone, this would bring us closer together. I just let go of his hand. I said, absolutely not.
Don't. John, wait up.
So when my brother offered for me to grab a few things and go to his house for a few days, I just knew that this was my chance to get away, that I needed to do it now. I knew the baby was safe because he loved the baby so much. I would take care of getting the baby later, which I did. Once I left that house, I wasn't going to go back. Several people had already been to the police. That's how the investigation started. It was just started out small and it grew. One of the first steps was to exhume the boys' bodies and send them to Dallas to have a very thorough, detailed autopsy. And the evidence showed that they had been placed in there when they were asleep. They had smoke and soot in their throat, but not enough if they're awake. Most fire victims, if they can't get out of a building, they find them in the corner. They find them huddled together. And they were separated from each other, but in a very relaxed position. The evidence showed that they made no attempt to get up. I believe that they were knocked out before he placed them in there. And then after the fire started, all those toxic fumes just put them to sleep forever. The investigation continued. Ed was free to come and go as he pleased for almost 10 months. Finally, Ed was arrested at his parents' house. When I see this picture of Ed being arrested, it gives me a little bit of satisfaction. When the jury delivered their verdict, Ed was convicted of capital murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison. Although it didn't bring back my boys, Ed's conviction gave me peace, and it just felt like a huge load was lifted off my shoulders that he was going to be locked up for life.
Arson cases once considered solved and closed are getting a fresh look in Texas. Ed Graff has spent 25 years in prison for killing his two stepsons. In 1988, prosecutors leaned heavily on photos of the shed's remains analyzed by investigators. But by today's standards of fire science, those investigators may not have been right.
Your heart just drops because I was told Ed would get a second trial. It was gut-wrenching, very gut-wrenching to know. Here we are all these years later, like 26 years later, and it creeps back up again.
Well, I testified in my first trial, and I would testify again, and all I can tell them is that I didn't do it. I loved them, and I treated them. I tried to treat them like my own.
It's a lie, just like he lied from the very beginning, from day one. The look on his face, I've seen that look before. And there's not a sincere bone in his body. It's the good fighting the evil. I wasn't going to let him win. That's what I felt like this whole time. It was like, okay, we go to war again. Here we go. After all these years of his lying and denying, Ed decided to plead guilty to murdering both Joby and Jason. And I was shocked. I wanted to hear him speak the words, so we accepted the plea. He had to stand before the judge in the courtroom and admit his crimes. And this is the part of the judicial confession that I heard that day. I, Edward E. Graff Jr., am pleading guilty because I am guilty of murder. I never expected to ever hear those words. I knew it all along, and now everyone else does too. Our governor created this law because the prisons were full and he could qualify for mandatory release if he admitted his crime. Because of the loophole, it was immediate release. So it happened within weeks after the end of the trial in 2014. For those 26 years, we all had peace of mind that he was not out on the streets, that he was behind bars and he was locked up not to hurt anyone else. And now he's out, living in an apartment, driving his car, having the freedom that you and I have. What matters to me is that he admitted his guilt, finally, after all these years. But it hurts me that he was able to have his freedom for what he did. It's so evil. I will never have complete justice for what he did. Even if he died, even if he got the death penalty, he's one person, and I lost two. And those children looked up to him and depended on him for their safety. I'll never get over the deaths of my children. I will just carry this pain to my grave. You learn to live with it. You have to go on. You have to go on, but you learn to live with it. Otherwise, you would just be a basket case somewhere. You know, I just refuse to let that happen.
The 23rd of January, 1978, Sacramento, California. David Wallin came home from work to find his wife brutally murdered in their bedroom. 22-year-old Teresa was 3 months pregnant.
She was shot 3 times with a .22 and eviscerated, and some horrid things done to that poor woman. Lieutenant Biondi said, "We have a sick son of a bitch. We have to catch this guy."
Even experienced police officers had never seen anything like it.
Her abdomen was cut open, the internal organs had been moved around. I found a used yogurt cup that had been taken to drink her blood. It's the most bizarre thing you'd ever seen.
The blood-drinking killer was 27-year-old Richard Chase, who would go on to be known as the Vampire of Sacramento.
He wanted to consume the blood of his victims. This really is something straight out of a movie or a horror book. He doesn't just want to kill people, he wants to consume them.
Within a month, he randomly slaughtered 6 people, including 2 children. His youngest victim being a 22-month-old toddler, whose body he decapitated, placed in an old cardboard box, and then dumped. He drank his victim's blood and terrorized the city of Sacramento, making Richard Chase one of the world's most evil killers. The 27th of January, 1978, Sacramento, California. Just 4 days after brutally slaughtering an expectant mother, Teresa Wallin, the serial killer struck again. 36-year-old Evelyn Meroth was also shot and disemboweled. Former Detective Bill Roberts was called to the house and met his colleague, Ivan.
He had the unfortunate fate of being the first officer on the scene at the Wallin homicide. Well, he was also the first officer on the scene at the Meroth homicide. I've never seen a person so ashen and pale in my entire life. And then the detective came out and said, "It's a bloodbath in there."
The depraved killer had also shot Evelyn's 22-month-old nephew, David, her 52-year-old friend, Daniel, and 6-year-old son, Jason, all dead. Former Detective Lieutenant Ray Biondi led the murder inquiry.
Jason Meroth was about the same age as my youngest son. You know, I had real close to a tearful moment. That wasn't very emotional, man. I mean, here was this kid all dressed up. His mother had bought him all these new clothes to go in the snow, and he simply was just executed like something in the way. I do remember that out of hundreds of murders, the feeling I had that day.
Evelyn's post-mortem revealed the sadistic murderer had indulged in necrophilia. The gruesome murders spread fear amongst the small suburb of Sacramento. They all took place within just over a square mile.
The Sacramento Bee almost made this kind of demanding headline that we do something, that we have some kind of crazed person doing these horrific crimes. And I think there was a rash of people buying guns at that time. And in general, everybody was speaking about it. It was just so horrific.
A blood-drinking serial killer was on the loose, and no one knew who was next on his hit list.
When these attacks became public knowledge, I think it really shook people's sense of stability and security, because what was normal had been completely disrupted. There didn't seem to be a pattern to these crimes. Anybody could fall victim.
Assistant District Attorney Albert Loker worked on the case. He recalls how the whole community was on a knife edge.
He could be at your door and come in, and you not know it until he was there and you were dead. And that's a scary thing.
This killer's story begins on the 23rd of May, 1950. Richard Trenton Chase was born in Santa Clara, California, and grew up with a younger sister.
Richard Chase seemed to come from a relatively normal family. I think there was quite a bit of controlling behaviour, especially on the part of his father. So he was very strict, he was quite a disciplinarian. And I think he put across some very fixed ideas about masculinity in the household. But that's not dissimilar to thousands of households across America.
He was just a normal kid. He was in Boy Scouts, he was in Little League, he had friends, and everyone described it as in many respects, a pretty normal life.
But the young Chase started showing sinister traits.
When Chase is 10 years old, his mother discovers that he's buried the body of a cat in one of her flower beds. Now, there were several cats that had gone missing from the neighbourhood. This is inherently disturbing behaviour. And his mother doesn't do anything about it. She doesn't try and get help for him. And I think this was very much part of the culture at the time. This is a really odd thing that doesn't make sense. So we're going to sweep it under the carpet and just hope it goes away.
By the time he was 15, the marriage between Chase's mother and father had begun to fray. At one point, they broke up, and Chase was sent to live with relatives. Eventually, his parents reconciled, and the family made a fresh start in Sacramento. At first, Chase seemed happy at high school, until a few years later, when it came to dating.
He had no problem getting the attention of girls because he was a good-looking guy, but when it came to the end of the night, when it came to a particular stage in the relationship, he couldn't perform in the way that he felt he was expected to. And I think it's at this point in time when he develops issues with his body. So his body is doing something that he has no control over. It's almost working against him. That's how he feels.
He was impotent, and this caused him anxiety. He visited doctor and psychiatrist about this when he was younger. He got into a crying fit once and told one of his friends, "I can't do it."
He started on a downward spiral, turning to drugs and struggling through high school. He found it difficult finding and holding down a job. Chase became even more obsessed with his health and was convinced that his major organs were failing him.
He had been to many doctors, and he was always trying to self-diagnose his own illnesses. And most medical doctors found out that he was in good health, actually.
At the age of 23, a neurologist diagnosed Chase as a paranoid schizophrenic and concluded he was suffering from psychiatric disturbances of major proportions. Soon his behavior became even more worrying.
He develops this fixation with drinking blood. There was a rabbit farm near to where Richard Chase lived, and he would go there and he would kill rabbits and he would drink their blood. And he would justify this, saying that he had a weak heart and that he needed to ingest this blood in order to restore himself.
On one occasion, this obsession even put his life at risk.
He wound up at the emergency room at American River Hospital being sick, and he did have septicemia, a blood infection. And he was questioned about what was wrong with him, and he said he had given himself an injection of rabbit blood because he felt he needed that for his health.
Eventually, on April the 28th, 1976, doctors transferred 25-year-old Chase to Sacramento's Beverly Manor Psychiatric Hospital. He was detained by the state for his own safety. But his insatiable thirst for blood continued, and his fellow patients nicknamed him Dracula.
He was capturing birds, and then he was twisting their heads off and ingesting the blood. But then over time, he was given psychiatric medications, Thorazine, major tranquilizer, and his behavior started to improve.
After making good progress, Chase was released from the hospital 5 months later, on the 29th of September. But by June the following year, his behavior lapsed once again.
This obsession with drinking blood as a way to kind of restore himself, as a way to nourish himself. This is an idea that becomes rooted in his mind and goes on to determine his behavior.
At one point, he killed his mother's cat, and he was outside in the yard and drew her attention to it and held up the bloody cat, and then smeared the blood around his neck and the back of his collar.
Horrified, his mother shut the door on her son and refused to let him near the house anymore. But Chase was still thirsty for blood, and to quench his addiction on the 3rd of August 1977, he drove his Ford Ranchero truck 145 miles northeast to Pyramid Lake in Nevada. This time he was targeting larger prey, and he was armed with guns.
He bought 2 rifles, 22, which is a small caliber rifle, and a 33, which is a more substantial hunting rifle. And he had taken these 2 rifles up to an area in the Nevada desert called Pyramid Lake. And he had gotten off in the wilderness there, and apparently what he'd done is he had killed a cow.
After tearing the animal to shreds, Chase consumed its blood. He then stripped off his clothes and vanished into the desert. The police came across his abandoned Ford Ranchero.
In the car, there's a pile of clothes, and there's a bucket which appears to be full of blood, and there's an organ which looks like a liver. And the officers who discover the car go in and look around nearby, and they find Chase naked and huddling on some rocks and covered in blood. So this looks horrific. This looks like potentially this guy's killed someone.
Chase ran when he saw the police approaching, but eventually they caught up with him and he was arrested.
The vehicle gets impounded, the blood and the liver go off for testing, and it's determined to be from a cow. They eventually released him. They wouldn't give him back his car, and they wouldn't give him back his guns.
This incident in itself should have been enough to say, hang on a minute, this guy needs help. At this stage in his life, he is internalizing his trauma. But what can happen with some offenders is that can switch the other way, and they can actually begin harming other people in order to get that sense of control that they really crave.
For the mentally unstable Richard Chase, killing animals would no longer be enough to satisfy his cravings. The 27th of December 1977, Sacramento, California. Chase retrieved his car from the police and was now cruising the streets of Sacramento with a new .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol. The bloodthirsty animal killer set his sights on a different kind of prey, humans.
There was a woman who was standing at her kitchen window washing her dishes, and a shot came through the window. The ball went right through her hair. It just barely missed. Went through her hair and lodged in a cabinet behind her. He's graduated from some of the animal kinds of things that he had done before that to now he wants to kill people.
Chase had failed in his first attempt at taking a human life, but just 2 days later, he was out roaming Sacramento suburbs in his pickup once again. He spotted 51-year-old Ambrose Griffin on his driveway.
He'd been shopping with his wife, he was helping her take the groceries in from the car, and in a split second, Richard Chase shoots him.
It hit a major vessel in his lungs. The emergency people were able to get there, and he was still alive and conscious, but there was significant internal bleeding, and he died in I'd say about 15 minutes probably. The family first thought maybe he had a heart attack. We later determined he had been shot, presumably by somebody going by in a car. The caliber of the weapon was determined to be a .22 caliber after projectiles were recovered. It was thought that this was just some sort of random thing, maybe vandals or kids just goofing off and firing shots.
Soon, however, the police linked the shooting of Ambrose Griffin with the woman who was shot in her kitchen 2 days before.
Detectives went to the house and they dug around in the cabinets and through the china, and they dug out a .22 caliber slug. Eventually, the crime lab was able to tell us that the .22 calibers were fired from the same gun that killed Mr. Griffin and also tried to kill this lady.
Detectives were mystified as to the motive for the random shootings, but Chase was delighted in his first kill, collecting press cuttings about his murder.
The newspaper was decrying how irresponsible, apparent vandals had been. It demonstrated to him that I can't get away with it. They're on the wrong track.
Chase now knew what it was like to take the life of another person, but he still hadn't actually tasted human blood. Nearly a month after his first murder, on the 23rd of January 1978, he decided to stalk the Sacramento suburbs by foot and broke into a family home.
There was a couple returning from shopping, and they went in their house. They heard somebody in the house, and the homeowner saw a man flee out the back. He chased him, but eventually lost him. He had a number of valuable items laid out that apparently he was going to steal before he got surprised. But he also left a calling card, and that he defecated in the baby's crib.
I think we've got to try and make sense of what this represents. So we have to look at the reaction that this kind of behaviour will get. You're going to be fearful. You're going to be disgusted. So I think for Chase, this is a way of gaining control, of gaining the upper hand, of feeling powerful and of feeling important.
Chase then made his way to the local shopping mall. Here the killer spotted his next potential victim, a former high school friend, Nancy Holden.
They talked for a little bit in the store, and then they separated in the store, but it seemed to Nancy that he was following her. She was unsettled by this. She went out to get in her car. He followed her out and called her and said, "Hey, wait."
He had this crazed look in his eye. He was trying to force himself into her car. She didn't allow that and finally drove off.
Still on the hunt for his next human victim, Chase found a gap in the fence behind the shopping mall that took him into a backyard. Here he spotted 22-year-old Teresa Wallin, who was at home alone. As she opened her door to take the garbage out, Chase slid into her hallway and shot her 3 times.
The first shot goes through her hand, along her forearm, and ends up in her neck. That is classical for somebody holding their hand out to ward off an assailant. She's then shot in the head. Chase wants to be sure she's dead, so we have a last shot from about 6 inches into the temple.
Not only did Chase take Teresa's life, he killed an unborn child. She was 3 months pregnant. Next, the killer indulged in his darkest fantasies, taking Teresa's body into her bedroom, where he slit her abdomen open.
This is his opportunity to explore, to experiment. So Chase has followed the pattern that is said to be quite classical for this sort of killer. He starts by opening animals, and then he goes on to kill a human being.
After violently stabbing her heart and a nipple, Chase removed Teresa's internal organs. But in the final act of the killing, he used an empty yogurt pot to drink his victim's blood.
Now he's getting to what he actually wants to do. He doesn't just want to kill people, he wants to consume them. He wants to own them and possess them.
It's all part of taking on someone's life essence. It is using them to strengthen yourself. It is an unnecessary act in killing. It is clearly some sort of fetishistic activity.
Chase then slid out through the back door. Later that day, Teresa's husband David came home from work to find the horrific scene.
I mean, here's a young man, it's just a young family. They're starting out making a life together. They're expecting their first child, and then to come home and find your wife in this condition, and this has been done to her. So devastating.
In a state of shock, Teresa's husband immediately called the police. Detective Lieutenant Biondi and crime scene investigator Frank Davidson were called to the house.
It was a very involved scene. We had casings on the floor. We had a mutilated body in the back. The scene work went on nearly 24 hours there just to try to figure anything out of that house.
It's the most bizarre thing you'd ever see, you know, because the lady was bare from the waist down. Her abdomen was cut open, the internal organs had been moved around. And he had taken dog feces and put it in her mouth. It was disturbing to know something like that was going on in the neighborhood. Some of her internal organs had been pulled out through that cavity in the body. There were blood stains around on the floor, and there was a crumpled yogurt cup that was right next to the body, and it had a lot of blood on it.
The police were puzzled by the yogurt cup. At first, they had no idea of their killer's blood-drinking fetish.
On the floor, you could see rings that might have been left by the yogurt cup actually being bloody and then being set down on the floor. In the same way, if you had a cup that was wet or had condensation and you set it on a table and then picked it up, there'd be a ring where the cup was.
At the time, what ran over my head, I couldn't understand why that was there.
On the cup, not such a process for fingerprints, it had a zigzag pattern like a rubber glove, latex-like rubber gloves, and you could see where he had gripped it. Check the bathroom, the sink, and the handles on the faucets had the same zigzag pattern, so we knew he was wearing gloves. The murderer had gone and gotten a knife from the kitchen and used that on the body, and then after all of that was done, took the knife back, cleaned it, and put it back in the dish rack. So that was certainly unusual kind of behavior. There were blood smears along her inner thigh close to her genitals. You have a knife thrust back and forth into her breast, through the nipple. There's a clear sexual aspect to those things. Sexual sadism, if you will.
The FBI drew up a profile of the depraved murderer for the police.
The FBI had called him as just a blitz killer. Just walk right up and just kill you. The classification for them from behavioral science was a disorganized killer. Pretty much of a loner that just acted on impulse. No plan as to how he was going to commit the crime. Really dangerous, super dangerous.
As the police launched a manhunt for the brutal killer, Richard Chase sat back and relished his achievement. Now he'd had his first taste of human blood, the vampire of Sacramento was ready to kill again. Having killed 2 people, Chase, who was still armed with his .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol, now reverted back to something he'd been doing since his childhood, killing animals. Just 2 days after Teresa's murder, the body of a dog was found by its owners, and they alerted the police.
The dog had been shot with the same caliber ammunition, .22 ammunition, as Teresa Wallen had been shot with. And the dog had been partially eviscerated as well, cut open through the abdomen. The kidneys had been cut out, but the kidneys were missing. The sheriff's department made a connection, saying, what was done to the dog's body, similar to what was done to Teresa Wallen's body, same type of ammunition.
Dogs were killed by .22s. Mr. Griffin was killed by a .22 caliber gun. And then, of course, we had Teresa Wallen homicide. And it was then when we thought, maybe we have a connection between all these 3.
Detectives concluded their killer lived somewhere within a 1-mile radius they'd mapped out.
One lieutenant said, we have a sick son of a bitch. We have to catch this guy. There was somebody who was pretty evil and twisted. I just wanted to help get him off the street.
So we drew all our activity to that mile square and had tremendous canvases going on. We were knocking on every door we could find. There was cops everywhere in that area.
4 days later, on the 27th of January, Chase would strike again. He focused on a new neighborhood a mile further south, Merrywood Drive. 36-year-old mother Evelyn Meroth shared a home here with her 6-year-old son, Jason.
The lady across the street was planning to take her daughter up to the snow and wanted to know if Jason would like to go. Evelyn said, sure, I think Jason would like to go, but he doesn't have good shoes for the snow.
So Evelyn's friend Daniel took Jason shopping while she stayed at home. She was babysitting her 22-month-old nephew, David. When Chase spotted the lone mother in her house, he decided to pounce.
Richard Chase went in through an open door. He entered the home without having to break and enter, essentially. But it was Evelyn who he was after. He wanted her. He wanted to consume her blood.
At that point, Evelyn Meroth was shot and killed, apparently in the hallway.
With Evelyn now dead, her 22-month-old nephew David started crying, so Chase coldly put a bullet through his head. Then he turned his mind back to Evelyn, whom he stripped naked.
Her body was moved to a front bedroom and thrown over a bed.
Chase then sodomized his victim.
The only time that we could establish that Richard Chase ever had an orgasm in a sex act with a woman was when he sodomized Evelyn Meroth. So there was a clear sexual sadism aspect to these crimes.
Chase had moved on to a whole new level, necrophilia, and he'd experienced the sexual release he'd waited so long for. But his attack still wasn't over. Chase slit Evelyn's abdomen open and stabbed her major organs. He then tried to cut out one of her eyes.
I think there's a very evident link here back to his teenage years, back to that time in high school when he was this popular, good-looking guy who got lots of girls, but when he got those girls, he wasn't able to perform with them. He experienced erectile dysfunction. So I think that lodges in his mind an association between women and shame and women and failure. And what he's doing in opening these women up and by implication humiliating them, is kind of leveling the playing field for him.
But the serial killer was suddenly disturbed during the macabre mutilation.
Sometime in the course of all this going on with Mrs. Meroth, Daniel Meredith, the family friend, and Jason came home. And they were shot in the living room right after they had come into the house.
Chase killed Daniel Meredith instantly. 6-year-old Jason was shot twice in the head. The fatal bullet was delivered at close range.
It is rare for children to be killed in the way that adults kill adults. And therefore the fact that he shoots both a 6-year-old and a toddler really tells you that he is not thinking of them as children. The sanctity of childhood that we have in society is ignored. They are simply dispatched coldly with a bullet.
Now the vampire of Sacramento returned to his final act. Using a bucket, he scooped the blood from the open cavity of his female victim and drank it. Then he took the body of 22-month-old David from his crib.
I think Chase took the baby from the scene because the baby, in this case, is reminiscent of what he did with animals earlier on in his life. So you have complete control over these creatures who are smaller than you, and he wanted to extend that feeling of pleasure, those feelings of power that he felt at the scene. So he took the baby with him to continue his offending.
Chase fled the scene in Daniel's car. In the solitude of his apartment, he decapitated the 22-month-old toddler, David, and also drank his blood.
I think this was an individual that was so focused on the act of consuming the blood of other people that he stopped seeing them as people. They were simply there to serve a purpose for him. They were dehumanized.
Back at Evelyn's home, a concerned neighbour raised the alarm after seeing what they thought was the dead body of Daniel Meredith when they peered through the living room window.
The sheriff's department is called and go in and find Mr. Meredith laying in the living room, having been dragged there dead. They find Mrs. Maroth naked, sprawled across the bed. They find Jason shot twice in the head. This becomes a major crime scene. It becomes the biggest story in Sacramento for a long time.
The community was really up in arms. There's a lot of headlines, a lot of real concern. In my experience, this is probably one of the scariest individuals you could deal with. Somebody who would hesitate to walk right up to your house, it could be high noon, and walk in and commit a murder. There didn't seem to be anything that's going to stop him.
It was now clear that a serial killer was on the loose, and the police were under pressure to find him, fast. To add to the urgency, they also had a missing toddler to track down.
The baby, David Ferreira, was our big concern at that time, although in the back of our mind we were pretty sure that he probably had been murdered because of the blood and the projectile had been fired into the bedclothing. But there was a big push to try to find David Ferreira, whether it be his body or he'd still be alive.
I think we were all like, oh my gosh, this is an evil person. How do we catch him? What do we do? How do we catch him?
Whilst the team went on the hunt for the missing toddler, crime scene officers examined blood patterns on the carpet next to Evelyn's body. Similar stains had also been found at the scene of his second victim, Teresa Wallen.
Found on the floor next to Miss Wallen's body were bloody rings, as if a bloody object had blood had been placed on the carpet there.
These circular stains had been a huge mystery to Detective Biondi until now.
Finally, somebody said, no, he was drinking blood. We figured out why he had the ringlets and stuff. That was the first time and the only time in my career, 17 years of homicide, that I ever encountered anything like that.
Now it was clear to the police they had a bloodthirsty killer on their hands who would stop at nothing to quench his depraved addiction. Friday, the 27th of January, 1978, Sacramento, California. 27-year-old Richard Chase had killed 6 people, including a 22-month-old toddler, David, whose body he removed from the scene in a stolen car belonging to one of his victims, Daniel Meredith. Detective Biondi and his team were on the hunt for the blood-drinking serial killer.
There was a big search put out for Meredith's car and also for the body, or we assumed it was the body of the young baby. We probably had a canvas going of 50 detectives who were banging on doors all over.
In the meantime, detectives were interested in the burglar seen on the day of Teresa Wallen's murder 4 days earlier. Neighbors also reported the same man acting suspiciously near Teresa's home.
They decided maybe this person could be a suspect. They got a composite sketch done, and the composite sketch was circulated widely in the sheriff's department.
The sketch was kind of really based on what people had told us, skinny, disheveled, dirty-looking individual, dirty clothing on. I don't think anybody realized that most of the dirty clothing was bloodstains, but he was always described as having this orange ski parka.
By a twist of fate, on Saturday the 28th of January, Chase's former high school friend Nancy Holden saw the sketch and alerted her father-in-law, who was a policeman. She told him about her confrontation with Chase in the shopping mall.
She looked in the squad car and she saw the sketch that we had put out of the suspicious, disheveled-looking individual. And she said that looked a lot like Richard Chase. And that was really the identification of the killer.
Daniel Meredith's missing station wagon had also been found, just over 2 miles from Richard Chase's home. With a potential name for their top suspect, the team dug deeper into his criminal past.
I started finding out about his background. He was up in Pyramid Lake, Nevada, found nude, covered in blood, with a .22 about a year before all of this stuff started happening. Found out that we had arrested him for carrying a loaded and concealed weapon. Found out that he had been in a psychiatric hospital and was deemed violent. So I'm putting all these things together. We had a flyer, which was a sketch of the suspect in the Teresa Wallen homicide. And I looked at it and compare it to a mugshot we have, except the sketch doesn't have a mustache and goatee. So I penciled that in, and then I put it next to the mugshot, and I go, this is very close.
With this new lead, Detective Bill Roberts and 2 colleagues drove straight to Chase's apartment.
We're standing both to the left and to the right of the door, knocking on the door. No answer. And so we're saying, hey, Richard, it's the sheriff's department. And there's movement in there. So I go out and talk to the guys, and I go, hey, let's do this. We'll pretend we're leaving, pound on the door, tell them we're going to go get a warrant, and you guys save the building here. So we do that.
As Detective Roberts went upstairs to the manager's office to phone police HQ, Chase made a run for it through his apartment door.
So I fly down the stairs and turn the corner, and they got him in a little pile there, and we start searching him. And that's when we find Mr. Meredith, wallet, driver's license, keys, a lot of credit cards, and he had pictures of the Maroth family. We knew we had him.
Chase was also carrying a box of bloody rags and the utility bucket he used to drink Evelyn Miroth's blood, and this was later matched to the blood rings found next to her body. Most damning of all, Chase was carrying a .22 caliber pistol, linking him to bullets found at the murder scenes.
They called me as soon as they wrestled him to the ground and says, we got him. He had Daniel Meredith's wallet in his jacket pocket. He also had a .22 in a shoulder holster. So we were pretty confident we got the guy. Just a great big relief.
Chase was taken back to the team's headquarters.
Everybody in the department from our division, as well as support groups, was standing on chairs, desks, wedged together, just to see this monster that we brought in.
But once in the interview room, Chase gave up nothing about his murders.
His stare, he didn't look at you. His eyes were constantly just darting. I'd raise my voice and say things and talk to him about the homicides and how could you do that? And it didn't matter. It didn't matter. We talked about Pyramid Lake and our knowledge of him being in Pyramid Lake. What were you doing nude full of blood in Pyramid Lake? Wouldn't acknowledge it. It was just like it didn't matter. So that one time after talking about dogs and animals, and then he tried to play it off like I'm in trouble for a bunch of dogs, and just blurted out, Irish setters are the best. It was like, what? Because I didn't know if he meant he liked Irish setters because they tasted good or because he liked Irish setters and maybe didn't hurt any. But it just was a spontaneous out of his mouth thing that had nothing to do what we were trying to get out of him. So it was by far, in my entire career, the toughest interrogation I ever had.
Even the most experienced homicide detectives couldn't get anything out of Chase. So Lieutenant Beyond's team had to find more evidence against him. They searched his apartment.
It was a stinking mess when they got there with rotten meat on the counters and what have you. Except one drawer where his knives and stuff were kept was very neat and, like a surgeon would have,
There were body parts, I don't know whether animal or human, but things in his refrigerator and the freezer. Some mixture that was like probably some part of anatomy in a blender. but it was a real involved scene to where he obviously was dissecting and killing animals inside that apartment.
Detectives also uncovered brain matter on the killer's bed, which was also found on the bloody rag seized during his arrest. Tests revealed this belonged to the missing toddler, David Ferreira. On the 24th of March, his body was finally found in a box on wasteland next to a local church by the janitor.
The baby had been decapitated. He had been out for almost 2 months at that point, and so there was a lot of decomposition. Also in the box with the baby's body were the keys to Daniel Meredith's car.
Just over 9 months later, on the 2nd of January 1979, Richard Chase stood trial on 6 counts of murder at Santa Clara County Superior Court. Chase finally admitted his crimes, but his defense team said they were not premeditated due to his mental illness. Assistant District Attorney Albert Locher was determined to prove otherwise.
There's a lot of evidence that show that Mr. Chase knew what he was doing, knew that it was wrong, and could formulate a plan. For instance, Mr. Chase wore gloves in these scenes. He didn't leave behind fingerprints. In the Wallen scene, he takes a knife out of the kitchen rack. He stabs her repeatedly, mutilates her body with it, and then he cleans it up and he puts it back in the rack. What is that if not trying to cover your tracks and cover what you did?
The prosecution made their case over the next 4 months, and on May the 8th, Richard Chase was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was later sentenced to death by gas chamber, but the infamous serial killer had a parting shot.
He was being given psychiatric medications, which were major tranquilizers, and he hoarded them until he got to a point where he felt he had enough pills to do what he wanted to do, and he ingested them all at once, and it was a fatal overdose, and he died.
He actually decided to take his own life. So for me, this is somebody who always wants to be in control, and he was very much in control until the end.
The so-called vampire of Sacramento's reign of terror was finally over.
The fear that he put in a community, a killer who would walk in your house in the middle of the day when you thought you were safe, would walk up and simply execute you. That's what made Richard Chase so evil. And after the killing, what he did just added to the horror of the killings.
Here's somebody who engaged in evil acts, but this was somebody who had mental health problems that went unaddressed. So I think when we're talking about accountability and responsibility in this case, this doesn't just lay at the hands of the offender. This is about society as well.
There are just evil people in the world. And like it or not, that's why you have the cops, because we go after those people, and you gotta eliminate the evil people, protect everybody else.
Chase mercilessly executed 6 people, including a 6-year-old child and a toddler whom he brutally decapitated. He violently mutilated 2 women, then drank their blood. He rained terror over the streets of Sacramento, and his crimes still haunt the city to this day. That makes Richard Chase one of the world's most evil killers.
That would have been easier for my son to be dead. When your son dies in my small rural community, people come over and they comfort you and they bring casseroles. They don't bring a casserole when your son's in prison for murder. Not quite 15 years ago, I realized that my son was a psychopath and he hates me. I have no doubt that Patrick, if he gets out, will try to kill me. I have no doubt of that. This is my favorite picture of Patrick. I look at this little kid and I think how innocent he was and how much he enjoyed life and how much I enjoyed him. I was a single mom living in Arkansas with my 2 sons, Clay, who was the older, and Patrick, the younger. We used to call Patrick Little Peter Perfect behind his back. Patrick was the golden child for me because he was never any trouble. And when he began to change, it came out of left field. It shocked me. Is that Patrick?
That is Patrick.
I couldn't recognize him. It's been 12 years since I've seen Patrick. This is inmate 655687, but he's not recognizable to me as my son. That's a stranger. And it's not somebody that I really want to know. Can you show me the picture of Patrick as the baby with the little yellow ball? There's no resemblance. This was a perfectly innocent little baby. And this is Man that's a monster. He's Charlie Manson. I love that baby, but he's gone. Patrick was the easiest kid in the world to raise until he was about 11. And that was when he started having problems. We were pretty poor. I was living on child support, and Patrick asked me for a Walkman, which was a in thing for kids to have at that time. And I told him I couldn't afford it. He seemed like he accepted that. But one day he came home from school and he had the Walkman. And I said, "Wow, where did you get that?" And he said, "Oh, I borrowed it from somebody at school." Well, I got a knock on the door.
Hello.
Hi.
Can I help you?
I'm sorry to bother you. Are you Patrick's mother?
Yes.
And there's two parents and a child standing outside.
I'm Tim.
Hi.
This is my wife, Betty. And it seems as though Patrick has convinced our son to sell him his Walkman.
And they tell me that Patrick had traded the son a $20 bill and a check for the Walkman. He had stolen a check and a $20 bill out of my purse.
Patrick, would you come in here, please?
God knows I was embarrassed that my son had done this.
All right, Patrick, give James back the Walkman and apologize for what you did.
Here. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Have a good day now.
You too.
After the parents left, I told Patrick, we need to talk about this.
What did you do?
I didn't do anything.
I didn't do it, was his response. I was furious at him for lying to me.
They have my check with my name on it, and how do you think they got it?
I said I don't know.
But Patrick continued to deny that that was the case. I was so angry that I didn't want to see his face.
Just go up to your room. I don't want to see you for the rest of the night.
Lying in the face of evidence. This is a psychopathic trait, but I didn't know it. I just thought it was a kid being stubborn. It was about 10 o'clock at night after I had spanked him and sent him to his room, and Clay went to bed. But then he came back out and told me that Patrick was gone. And I went into the room and the window was open. The screen had been knocked off of the window and Patrick was nowhere to be found. I was frantic, so I called 911. It turned out the county to look for him. And he was found about 7 miles away.
Have a good evening, ma'am.
Thank you, officer. You too.
When Patrick came home, he was still enraged and defiant.
Patrick, don't you walk away from me. We're going to talk about this.
He was looking me straight in the eye with this stony glare.
Don't do it again.
I'd never seen that expression on Patrick's face.
What are you gonna do, lock me up?
That famous picture of Charlie Manson staring like Satan, that's the look. And among people who are familiar with psychopaths, we call it the look. And he said, you can't watch me 24 hours a day. I'll do it again, and you can't stop me. He would do what he wanted to do, and there was nothing in his mind that I could do about it. And that scared me to death because I knew he was telling the truth. I couldn't watch him 24 hours a day. I was in college. I was working part-time. And so I tried to figure out a way to control him. And so I took him out of public school, enrolled him in a private school. My son went to church with me 3 times a week. He was taught responsibility and truthfulness. After a while, he went back to being little Peter Perfect again. So it kind of passed over as far as I could see. When Patrick was about 15, I was working nights in a hospital. And one night I get a call at work from a cop, and he has found Patrick joyriding in the second car that I had. They brought him to the hospital where I worked. He was not very remorseful. He thought it was funny. He was, again, defying me. I was scared and frustrated and angry. He could have killed somebody or killed himself.
Now you listen to me. What you did was dangerous. I won't let you do it again.
I said, okay, I have extra beds in the hospital. If you're going to pull this kind of stuff, I can't trust you. So here's the deal. For the rest of the school year, you're going to come with me to work.
From now on, I'm going to keep a closer eye on you.
And I'd put him to sleep in an empty hospital bed and then take him to school in the morning. So he had 24-hour supervision, and he didn't like that. The look he had in his eyes was so defiant and so angry that it actually made me afraid. It's almost, I would love to cut your throat. It's horrible. I didn't think he was going to kill me, but it was an absolute defiance. I'm laying there on the floor, and Patrick's just standing over me with this defiant look. And I'm totally dumbstruck that he would do this. That summer following the joyriding, I sent him and Clay to my parents. My dad was a school teacher. He was retired. So I wanted him to, over the summer, when I couldn't watch Patrick myself day and night, keep an eye on him. In the fall, Patrick came home. I wasn't taking him to work with me anymore. Things kind of went back to normal. And then he started roaming the streets at night. One morning, I got up about 6 o'clock in the morning, and I went into the kitchen to make a cup of coffee, and Patrick comes strolling in the back door.
Patrick?
And he'd obviously been out all night.
You can't be out all night. You've got class in a couple of hours.
So? I told Patrick that he could not be out at night. It was a school night, and I had no idea where he was going or what he was doing.
From now on, you're going to have a strict curfew, and if you don't...
We got into a verbal altercation, and the next thing I know, he hits me.
Oh!
Knocks me to the floor. And then he kicks me in the ribs. It was over in 30 seconds. I'm laying there on the floor, and Patrick's just standing over me with this defiant look. I'll do what I want to do, and you can't stop me. And the next thing I know, he's out the front door and gone. And I end up with a couple of broken ribs. I just laid there for probably 5 minutes before I even tried to get up. But I didn't even really feel the physical pain. It was emotional pain that my son would hit me and kick me and then just stand there. After I was finally able to get up, I called the police and I turned him in for assault and runaway. I was trying to give Patrick consequences for his behavior. But my mother had taken him in to save him from the cops and getting him in trouble. She's going to take care of him, and he'll be a good boy at her house. I thought that Patrick would be better with a man in the house, and so I was happy and excited for him to come home. I actually thought things were okay. He was going to high school for his senior year, making decent grades, and I thought things were kind of hunky-dory. About 6 months after we had moved to Florida and things seemed good, I got a knock on the door in the afternoon. And it was the school resource officer who came in and very gently broke to me the news that Patrick had a gun at school in a gray gym bag and had been showing it to other students. Well, Patrick wasn't home, and I immediately looked in the back seat. And sure enough, there was a gun in the gray gym bag. There's no words for the fear, the pain, the frustration. I can't think of a word in the English language that can encompass the pain I felt. And then Patrick came home.
What is this?
And he had a kind of a shocked, uh-oh look on his face. It surprised him that I knew he had the gun.
Where did you get it? And why would you bring it to school?
He didn't say anything, and I verbally lit into him.
Did you hear me? I asked you a question.
I don't remember exactly the words I used, but I told him there would be severe consequences.
You know what? I am sick of the nonsense. I'm calling the cops.
And he took off. He ran. And I'm left standing there with a gun in a gray gym bag. And then I called the police and told them he was a runaway. At this point, as his mother, it was like I was on a roller coaster. And each time it hit bottom, it was worse than the time before. But I couldn't let go of my fantasy son, the boy that I wanted him to be. And it was hard for me to accept the reality of who Patrick was. That night, he stole a motorcycle, and 2 days later, the police caught him and called me. And my husband and I went to the police station, and this big old cop brought him down. And Patrick looked at me with absolute contempt, and his words were, "What the took you so long?" It was like I'd been hit in the face with a bucket of water. He, I think, wanted to show me that he was in control. I was so mad, and I wanted to show him that I did have some control over him. And I turned to the policeman and I said, "There's been a mistake. This boy looks like my son, but he can't be my son because my son wouldn't talk to me like that. Take him back." And my husband and I turned and left. And I got a glimpse out of my peripheral vision of Patrick having a totally shocked look on his face that was totally unexpected on his part. I got home and the telephone rang, and it was Patrick. And he was crying, wondering why I had not taken him out. We went to court a few days later. He got probation, mandatory counseling, and a curfew. He wasn't 18, so they released him to me, and I brought him home. I was so tired of dealing with his things one after another that I almost didn't want to take him back. But I felt like I had to. I was his mother. It wasn't very long before he convinced his brother to rent an apartment for the two of them to move into. I knew that nothing good could come out of Patrick getting Clay to rent an apartment for the two of them. I knew that was a total disaster in the happening.
Clay?
I did my best to talk Clay out of renting the apartment.
I don't think I like this. Are you sure you want to do it?
Hey, don't worry about it, Mom. I can look out for him this way.
It's not too late to get your deposit back.
But Patrick talked him into it.
You know how he is.
I'll be fine. I can handle it.
And they moved out. I kept saying, "Oh, he's just a teenager and he'll grow up and be okay." I wanted to believe that Patrick would be okay. I stayed in denial. I wanted to throttle him for doing something like this, for being so stupid. Not long after they moved out, maybe a week, my husband and I went over to their apartment.
No, it's not really a good time.
Don't be silly. We're coming in.
And I walked in. The whole apartment was covered with computer and TVs and wallets and all kind of merchandise that I knew had to be stolen. And I asked Patrick, "Where did you get these? Did you steal them?" And he said, "Hey, I don't have a job. I need some way to get money."
I have to pay my rent somehow. Unless you're going to pay it for me.
And I said, "Stealing is the way you intend to support yourself?"
I did not raise my son to be a petty criminal.
It was like, enough is enough, boy. I'm calling the cops.
Come on.
We talked about me turning him into the cops years and years later. And he said, "You shouldn't have done that to me. You shouldn't have turned me into the cops." And I said, what should I have done? I was trying to teach you a lesson to stop you from destroying your life. And he said, I don't know, but you shouldn't have called the cops. You shouldn't have betrayed me. Now, this is his second arrest in Florida. But in Florida, unless a juvenile has murdered somebody, they will immediately release them to their parents. No bail, nothing, just release them. So about 2 or 3 days after he came home, I wake up one morning and Patrick's gone. The ankle monitor was laying on the floor. He cut it off. It was kind of like giving me the finger. He was showing me that I couldn't control him. He was going to do what he was going to do. I found out he'd stolen another motorcycle and gone to Texas. I had a sense of urgency. I knew that if he continued to do that when he turned 18, he was going to prison. He's going to have a criminal record. And I only had a few months to get through to him to calm it down. He was on the downhill slope on a bobsled, and I wanted to stop it before he hit a tree. This is my son, the felon. This is his first adult mugshot. I had a fantasy of seeing Patrick graduate from an Ivy League school with a PhD. And what I get is a mugshot. He was arrested for aggravated burglary in Dallas. He stole some computers at gunpoint and tied the people up. He looks kind of like he's surprised that he got caught. He just looks dead, empty. It's like somebody that's without any emotion. This is no longer my child. You know, this is just some thug. A few months after Patrick got out on parole, he came to visit us. He came in and he asked me, do you know why I didn't come home?
Bet you want to know why I tried to stay in Texas.
All right. Why don't you tell me?
And he looked at me and said in a very hateful voice, I didn't come home because I knew if I got into trouble, you would turn me into the cops. And I said, you got that right, boy. Nothing has changed.
I want you to get your life together, so stop giving me reasons to turn you in.
He just kind of huffed and walked off. And basically that was the last I spoke to him that visit. I knew Patrick hated me, and there are no words to describe the feeling of having your child essentially spit in your eye. It knots up in my stomach. It goes up my spine. It comes out as tears. I can't explain the depth of the pain that I felt. And even now, talking about it will bring up fears and tears and pain.
For 3 days, Tarrant County lawmen searched through a wooded area in North Fort Worth.
Nothing would have prepared me for what was to come next. Nothing would have prepared me for Patrick becoming a killer. I knew that Patrick had bad behavior and violent behavior, but the only thing I'm afraid of at that point in time is that he's going to do something that is illegal. whether it's rob a liquor store or steal a car, but nothing would have prepared me for Patrick becoming a killer. Hello? I picked up the phone, and it was a detective from Dallas telling me that my son, Patrick, had killed a girl. At that point, I melted down, totally melted down. I screamed like a dog who had been shot with a shotgun in the gut. I screamed and I cried. It was my worst fear. I was grief-stricken. I was in denial. I was in sadness. I was in anger. I felt every range of emotion that the human can feel.
For 3 days, Tarrant County lawmen searched through a wooded area in North Fort Worth. They combed hundreds of acres on the ground and in the air, looking for Dallas teenager Jessica Witt.
Patrick called me in a few days and told me that he had been arrested for murder, but he wasn't guilty, and that she was a girl that he knew and worked with. He worked in some kind of telemarketing firm with her.
She was reported missing from her apartment in northeast Dallas January 20th. Her parents say she left with a friend, and the parents say that friend told their daughter's roommate he killed Jessica.
They didn't have Jessica's body. They didn't know where it was. And so I wanted to believe that he didn't do it, but I was afraid that he did.
Police arrested the suspect on a parole violation, but still with no proof of murder.
I couldn't believe anything he said. He had lied to me so many times, but I didn't want to believe he was guilty. So it was a yes, no, yes, no, yes, no feeling, and vacillating back and forth between he probably did it to maybe he's innocent. While he was in jail on parole violation, he called one of his ex-convict friends and told him where to find the body and to please go move it.
Spot you're looking for is directly in line with the tower. Are you talking about in the open pasture? Yeah. You'll see a grove of trees between the road and the tower. It's a small grove. There'll be a tree falling over in front of you. You know what I'm talking about? The point you need to be. All right.
I don't know how stupid Patrick could be, how unsuccessful somebody as smart as he is could be to make a telephone call that he knows is monitored to some other guy and tell him where the body is and go move it.
The main thing is, if you can't find it tonight, I know. I'll look. If I go out there now, I got all day.
No, for goodness sakes, how stupid. Any person with an IQ of 50 would be a more successful criminal than Patrick was.
I'm serious. Do it, because Saturday, all gonna hit the fan, and if they find it, I'm gone. It better be good. Well, all right. And I'm counting on you. This is my life, dog. All right.
But of course, the cops were listening, and they went and found the body. He shot her twice in the head. This is Jessica. She was a gorgeous girl. I learned that he had stolen her grandfather's credit card, and she had told her family that he had used the credit card. And that was why he killed Jessica, because she betrayed him. She told about him using her grandfather's credit cards. She didn't realize what she was dealing with Patrick. She had no earthly idea that she was dealing with a man who could put a gun to her head and pull the trigger if she ticked him off. I didn't contact her family for over 20 years because I was so afraid I would hurt them more. When Patrick put a bullet in Jessica's head, he destroyed her family. When he put the second bullet in her head, he destroyed me. I was absolutely terrified that Patrick had sent this man to kill me. After Patrick was arrested, I went to visit him some. I wrote him every day. I tried to be supportive and hoped that he was innocent. I didn't want to know the truth. The truth was too painful to accept. We really didn't talk about the murder. If we did talk anything about it, it's, I'm innocent, Mom, and I'll prove it. I'm innocent. I have an alibi witness. I didn't do it. I was crazy in grief. The pain deepened. The shame deepened, and I felt alone. I felt like a failure as a parent. I would have drained every drop of my blood out of my body if that would have straightened Patrick out. I would have sold my soul to Satan, anything to straighten Patrick out. I didn't give up. I didn't give up for over 15 years after he killed Jessica Witt. I had visited Patrick a couple, 3 times a year in prison. And in 2007, I went to visit, and he said, "You wouldn't like me very much if you knew the truth about my crime. It's worse than the cops know."
Bet you wouldn't come visit me if you knew what I really did.
And I could see that he had no repentance for what he had done. And I asked him, I said, what could be worse than putting 2 bullets in her head? Did you burn her with cigarettes? Did you make her beg for her life? What could have been worse?
Patrick, what did you do to that girl?
Wouldn't you like to know?
He looked me in the eye with that horrible, psychopathic stare. He was proud of what he had done. And it stabbed me in the heart. There was no longer any way that I could stay in denial that he was redeemable. I knew that, for lack of a better word, he had turned his life over to Satan. He had a reprobate mind, as the Bible says. When I walked out of that prison, I was done with Patrick. This is a letter from Patrick to me. Ultimately, you did this to me. So while before I was not your enemy at all, I am now. You don't like me, and I didn't and don't like you. Your spite seems to know no bounds, and that's fine because my patience and tenacity knows neither. And I've already told you what the consequences of this would be. I have nothing of value to me left to lose. He's now warning me that, look out, I'm coming for you. He hated me. He wanted me dead, just like he wanted Jessica dead for betraying him. And I have betrayed him. Years after Patrick went to prison, I get a call from a man who says he's looking for a small rental property. He heard that I had one. And after he moved into the house, the next thing I know, the phone lines were being cut, the water lines were being cut. And he starts to very vaguely threaten me. I was absolutely terrified. I find hundreds of letters from Patrick to this man telling him how to manipulate our family, and I dubbed him the Trojan horse. He was a former cellmate of Patrick's, and Patrick had sent him. So I went to the local sheriff, and he gets arrested, and he goes to jail. I firmly believe that the man was sent here to kill me. I can't prove that, but I believe it. I left my home because I didn't feel safe. I didn't tell anybody, even my most intimate friends, that I was gone. At this point in time in my life, I know that if Patrick can find somebody else to come to kill me, he will. That's my fear. I have a gun on every flat surface in my house. I have a 17-camera security system on my house. My son Clay lives in hiding, and I try not to live in terror, but to live in caution, because I don't want to die. I have no doubt that Patrick, if he gets out, will try to kill me. I have no doubt of that. And so Jessica's family and I decided to work together to keep Patrick behind bars. I don't think that Patrick should have been given life with the possibility of parole. I think he should have been given life without parole, or that he should have been executed. He has no compassion. And without compassion, you're not a human being. But I have managed to compartmentalize it and accept that the man in Texas is not my golden child. The little boy, he was so cute and so loved and so wonderful. In my mind, I buried that little boy. My son's dead. My little Patrick, my little Peter Perfect, is dead. And the man in Texas is a stranger. I don't know him. All I know is he is a psychopath and he hates me. He wants to hurt me. But he's not my son. My son is dead and buried.